we're looking at that issue and taking into consideration the cost portion, just because we are foregoing other financial options by taking on more of an exclusive position with the administration. So if we were to agree to limited exclusivity, I think, Verona is really looking to be more in that, $30 million for 1 million vaccine range.
So exclusivity is definitely an important area for us. And I think we are willing to budge and, go for a limited option. However, I think we would like the price to kind of reflect that because of how important exclusivity is. I think we would prefer around a cost plus. That's something you guys might want to discuss.
Yeah, and so before we go any further, I want to just maybe flip this on its head a little bit and see if you guys would be willing to discuss potentially a number that's in that cost plus range, but move to unlimited exclusivity, just because that does give us, the option to get that higher price where we can. And so essentially where we're coming at from, the theory behind this is that if we can't get our full price from you guys, we need to kind of protect our client's interest in getting it from somewhere else, if that's a possibility. And it seems at this point like it is. So I guess that's where we would go if you guys were interested in that cost plus price range.
Yeah, we would be, we understand that, we have had a prior relationship with you with, the SARS vaccine, and we would love to maintain that relationship. And we're not trying to cause any tension, between your company and our administration. We were looking at more of maybe around the $24-25 million range. Unfortunately, right now, because COVID's affected a lot of people, right? And we've been giving out stimulus checks to keep our citizens afloat. They really need that extra money. Our treasury is just swamped, and we really have no wiggle room to pay any more than that. Unfortunately, that is a hard line that our administration has given us, is just excessive cost.
We are extremely sympathetic to that. Obviously, we understand, we've worked closely with the administration for a very long time, and we know kind of the current state of affairs. And so again, I kind of want to reinforce that we are willing to come, to take that cost plus number on price, but we would ask for unlimited exclusivity, which, this is a tough place to be on behalf of the corporation, but we really are at the end of the day having to look out for our client's best interest. And so for us, it really means that if we do take that lower price, we do need unlimited exclusivity so that we can, kind of bargain for a higher price elsewhere.
Okay, we completely understand that. And I think we're a little bit at an impasse right here. So why don't we put a pin in this? So far, we are really kind of stuck at possibly limited and cost plus, simply because exclusivity is so important. But let's move on to a few other issues and then maybe circle back to that, if that is okay with people.
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right. So as far as the date of delivery, do you know anything that you might be comfortable with giving so far? What's your range that you're thinking of?
Yeah, we had looked at 50% of the number of vaccines delivered within the first 3 months. And part of that's just because of the scope of our global rollout, right? And then the agreement that we have with you guys, which we just talked about a little bit, what that might look like. We just need to be able to protect ourselves from a really kind of a logistical feasibility standpoint, right? So there's no way that we could get you 100%. And we would never promise that on behalf of our clients. They would tell you themselves that as a company, they could never possibly promise 100% for anything because it's just incredibly difficult to say that that's even feasible. And so we're looking at a 50% number for that. But might be willing to work if there's something else that you guys really need to press on.
Yeah, I think, I don't think 100% is really expected. Obviously, it'd be ideal. We were looking a little bit more in the 75% range. If we were expecting 75%, what are some other areas as far as clinical trials or distribution that you might be willing to work on us with if we asked for 75%?
Yeah, I think even if we were to circle back to one of the issues we were just discussing, right? If we look at the cost factor for manufacturing, and we're able to work out something there, or on the clinical trials, right? That's something that is incredibly expensive for us to carry out. As you guys well know from working with many pharmaceutical manufacturers, R&D costs are astronomical for us. And those clinical trials are an extension of that. And so really it's something that we want to make sure that we're giving you guys the data you need to be able to fall back on from a PR standpoint, and the data that we need for our customers to feel safe after being administered one of our vaccines. And so we're really happy to give you guys any commercial data that we have in lieu of a formal clinical trial to allow you guys to continue to make informed decisions on that front, and to help us make our customers feel safe.
I just have we completely understand where you're coming from, and we appreciate what you're telling us, but we would also like you to be a bit more flexible. I mean, we gave you our hard terms, and I mean, both me and my co-counsel, we understand, these are pretty, would be pretty hard on you if we really went for those terms. And the terms you're really giving us, I see a lot of benefit for you, but we don't really get much in return. In fact, it's kind of hampering what our mission is to effectively provide vaccines to the American citizens. And if we would provide, a vaccine, I'm sorry to go back to issue 2. It's kind of intertwined in my mind though. If we're going back to a cost plus where we're going to be paying a premium for a vaccine, I would imagine we could at least get a faster delivery for that premium. Compounded with the fact, oh, I'm sorry, David, you can go ahead. I saw you on mute.
Oh no, you
okay.
Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt your train of thought.
Okay, thank you. And compounded with the fact that, that if you are also going to go for the unlimited, then we're paying a premium for a vaccine which may not be prioritized to our own citizens, and frankly, we may not even be getting a large supply because you can only guarantee 50%. So I just don't really see how this helps us. It really seems to be all in your favor.
Stephen, I understand where you're coming at from that. I would say though that when we talk about cost plus, right, we're really talking about not even quite a market rate. It's not necessarily a premium. It helps us make a little bit of money so that we can continue to develop vaccines, so that we can continue to deliver vaccines, so we can continue to do all of those things which we're here to talk about today. And so if we were to start giving things away, and right, if we were to give you the vaccine at cost, that's not a feasible business model for our client. And so, I think to characterize cost plus as a premium might be a little unfair. I think cost surplus could certainly be construed that way potentially. But cost plus, I'm just not sure that that's a fair categorization there. But I do want to circle back to the clinical trials, right? That's something that's important for both of us to come to an agreement on. And so I think that if it's really important to you guys that we continue on that front, or that we initiate a trial, I think 3 months gives us the cover that we need, and the cover that you guys need to make sure that the vaccines continue to be effective, that they have results for patients and positive health outcomes, and it gives you guys some air cover from the PR perspective.
I understand where you're coming from, but it almost feels like we're being lowballed here. For example, you said that I can't view cost plus as a premium, But from my data, it tells me that at cost, it costs $10 million for 1 million doses of the vaccine, and your company would be making a $10 million or a $1 million profit, or 10% profit, I'm sorry. So at the at cost price you're offering us, you're already making a profit. And then with cost plus, we would be paying more than double what the at cost price is. And I feel if we're gonna do that, we need something in return that, shows some good faith that we're trying to meet somewhere in the middle. Because right now we're not really getting the sense that there's any flexibility going on with your company. And I'm sure that's not, maybe it's just my impressions, but I know we can get there. I know we can get there. And, just through some discussion, maybe we can find something that's more amicable that my co-counsel and I feels is more fair.
So maybe we do a little bit of a circle back here and kind of maybe dive back into that cost a little bit, if that's something that you guys would be interested in doing, and then tie back in exclusivity. For the simple fact that we understand where you're coming from on cost. And we do, I support my co-counsel's position that for us, cost plus really is the middle of the road. And so, cost surplus is an area where I could see you guys really feeling like we're putting your feet to the fire, but cost plus not so much, which is why we were willing to kind of bend on exclusivity there. And so I think that is where we are, at the end of the day, a for-profit corporation, our client is, and that's the interest that we have to look out for. And obviously there is a much bigger humanitarian issue going on here, but we're here today to champion our clients' best interest. And that really does mean making sure that they get, the best financial outcome and that they're able to continue exploring that outcome elsewhere. If we're not getting that cost surplus price, because that is the price that we've been asked to get. So all of that to say, we understand that you guys feel that cost plus is paying a premium, and we're willing to accept the cost plus price for that unlimited exclusivity. And so that's what we're trying to tell you is that we need to get our price for our client, or we need to be able to give them the option to get it elsewhere. And so I think that my co-counsel and I could consider cost plus and limited exclusivity, but that would be a major concession for our client. And that would have to reflect the negotiation elsewhere.
We feel though that cost plus and limited exclusivity is a good middle ground that kind of benefits both parties.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump back in here really quickly because
okay.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say that if this is a point of contention, and I understand that you said maybe we need to negotiate elsewhere before we can discuss this. So I am free to, let's shift the topic to whichever you want. Or if my co-counsel wants to bring something up, or if you do, we're open.
I mean, so we'll agree to cost plus and limited exclusivity. If that's something that you feel is a middle ground and that's something that the administration is comfortable committing to, we're comfortable committing to that. I guess my only contention was, we're not getting our highest price for our client, and that's what we were sent here to do. And so that exclusivity really is, we don't want it to seem like we're not willing to budge anywhere, because that exclusivity is a really big deal for our client, just like it is for the administration. So that's really all I was trying to say with that. But on that note, we are willing to commit to cost plus and limited exclusivity if that's something that the administration is amenable to.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can really work with. And we understand that that's probably going to reflect elsewhere on other issues. And, with that being said, we haven't really even looked at storage and distribution. And we understand, if you're going to be flexible in these areas, we're more than happy to be flexible elsewhere. And I know that with storage and distribution, right now, option 4 is the most beneficial for us. And we would love to hear where you're standing right now with storage and distribution.
I have notes.
Sorry guys, we're in the same room, so we have some audio bugs occasionally. So yeah, I think option 4 is your best case scenario, and option 1 is our best case scenario. But I want to take a second to look at the common ground there, right? Why, they seem like they're polar opposites, but why might they be more similar than we think? They both only require a single dose. Now, option 4 requires special storage, but you get the increase in efficacy, as you guys know. And then on our end, that vaccine can be stored in regular refrigerators, but you would suffer a small hit to efficacy. So my question is this: is there a way that it would actually be beneficial to the administration if they went with option 1 because of the vaccine's ability to be stored in regular refrigerators? No special storage would be required, which would make it easier for the administration to hold on to the vaccine and then get it administered to citizens. And there wouldn't be any cost there either.
Yeah, I actually think it's one of our kind of key points to actually not use special fridges. So I think that's something we're in agreement on. But obviously another large point is efficacy. We don't want to see a decrease in efficacy. So what's your opinion on that?
I think that's completely understandable. I mean, we, as a company, we're committed to putting out the best products that we can. And so even though, even though this may make more sense on one front, that efficacy hit, right, may not be worth it for either of us. And so if that's the case, we certainly don't want to negotiate on a moot point between the two of us. So if we're worried about efficacy, as you said, then, and we're taking into consideration storage costs, option 2 seems like it makes a whole lot of sense, right? We only have 2 doses instead of potentially 3. There's no special storage required, and we keep the same level of efficacy. And so I think that would address all of the concerns that you guys raised. What do you think about that?
I think that's a really good starting point. I think it's something that me and my co-counsel will discuss in a little bit. And then, but we're not entirely rejecting the idea. I think if we do look at option 2, as you said, we would prefer a moderate term for the clinical trials.
Can you talk a little bit about why that might be? I mean, how are those 2 items related? Is there anything that we can draw a correlation there on how that might help you out if we were able to move on the clinical trial front?
It's not necessarily that the 2 are related. Stephen, did you want to discuss this issue?
Yeah, sure, I can jump in. I would say efficacy is probably one of our top priorities. We don't want to have a product that, might be defective or cause side effects down the road that we have no idea about. So that kind of ties in with the clinical trials. By extending the term and, testing these for a longer time, 6 months, 3 months, a year, there might be unexpected side effects that arise in a population that we never were able to test because, this happens so fast. Everything's being done through emergency orders. Nothing is actually thoroughly vetted, thoroughly tested. So, for all we know, there might be some subpopulation that is sensitive to this vaccine. And through prolonged clinical trials, that might be something we see. Maybe a decreased efficacy, maybe a bad side effect. And we think that is because efficacy is probably one of our top priorities. We need to make sure it's a top of the line product.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Here's what I'm hung up on as far as the storage and distribution. What I might not understand is where the downside is in option 2. After listening to Mr. McCants, it sounded like we wanted to keep doses low, we wanted to go with regular storage, and we didn't want to impact efficacy, right? And so in our mind, option 2 provides a concession on our part when we're talking about working towards your option 4, a concession on our part that meets all of those concerns that you had. And so I think in our minds, to continue to use storage and distribution as a bargaining chip may not make a whole lot of sense. I mean, I feel like we're ready to come to a consensus on storage and distribution. And so I think if y'all are ready, we're ready to pin that in as an option that makes sense for both of us, unless there's a concern that I happen to miss there.
So we still believe that option 3 is the best for us, because as you correctly stated, we do care about efficacy, but it was a bit, maybe we just didn't explain it as well as we should have, or it was misunderstood. We care about not only the reduction in efficacy, but also benefits, increases in efficacy. And the data shows us that 3 doses increases efficacy by 10%. That's a lot. So because the administration is prioritizing efficacy as one of its target elements, that is something we're paying very close attention to. And if we have an option that could increase efficacy, that is something we think we should take.
Just to add on to that, we're able to increase efficacy by quite a lot while also using regular fridges, which is also important to us.
That makes sense. I appreciate you laying that out again for me. So if we were to move to option 3, right, we're talking about a 3-dose vaccine that with an increase in efficacy, as you said, no special storage. Stephen, you had raised that clinical trials might be a way to cover ourselves or cover you guys or even discover any potential side effects down the road. And so if we were to go with a vaccine that we know is more effective, if we're able to go a route that's has a higher efficacy rate, it might make sense if we're able to have you guys budge a little bit on the clinical trials. And so I think, something we'd be willing to do would do a moderate term, a short-term clinical trial in exchange for going with option 3 as far as storage and distribution is concerned.
Would it be okay if me and my co-counsel just conferred for a few minutes, just kind of discuss your proposal?
Take your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, we're back. So I discussed with my co-counsel about our current stance, and we would like to offer this proposal and just kind of hear what you think about it. We will do option 3 we are asking for a long-term study, and we are okay with 50% of the data delivery.
I think long-term, from our perspective, just isn't quite feasible. And part of that really has to do with the cost perspective, but also the argument you raised earlier about efficacy and concerns there. I'm not sure that the experts they have back at Verona would really say that that's a necessary thing for them to carry out, given the route that we're going with the vaccine that y'all have discussed. But, you know, I do think, you know, we had talked about commercial data, providing that to you guys, and y'all are coming back with a long-term study. And so I think something that we'd be willing to do is option 3, as you laid out, and then a short-term study. So that would be, you know, 3 months of clinical trials on our account. And then I think on the delivery date front, we can bump that up to 65%. We appreciate your willingness to come in at 50%. I think we can talk to our guys and have 65% delivered in that first 3-month window, if we're able to work a little bit on these other terms.
Okay, thank you. So would you mind going through an entire list of where you're at right now? That way we can make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, so what I have right now is a limited distribution model at cost plus pricing. And then I've got a 65% delivery within 3 months, a short-term clinical trials, and then option 3 as far as the specific vaccine storage and distribution.
Okay, I think all of those numbers combined would be perfect if we could do a moderate term trial. If you could fix that one thing, we definitely be able to come to a conclusion. And if you would like to confer together, we'd be more than happy to take a break.
Yeah, we may want to, you know, do that in just a few minutes, and after we talk through this a little bit more. And you know, I understand where you guys are coming from, but this kind of brings us right back around to the price. So the moderate trial really puts us in a tricky position for pricing. And so, you know, that short-term trial and bumping us up to 65% of delivery, really what we're looking at there is, you know, quicker production and quicker production without risking efficacy, which, you know, is very important to the administration and of course is important to us. And so we're going to be spending more to ensure that those vaccines are delivered, 65% of them are delivered in that 3-month window. So really, you know, conceding that, you know, 15% of delivery, really from a price perspective, we can't afford to do the, you know, moderate trials and it still come out beneficial to our client. So we're really looking at keeping that short-term trial if we do concede down to 65% on delivery.
If you're willing to do so we would be willing to do short-term trial if you would be willing to provide 75% and we do option 4.
I think that kind of diverts our clients' interests in more than one way. So, I mean, we're, you know, I understand where you're coming from, but that not only makes, you know, the storage and distribution less favorable for us, but it also makes delivery less favorable for us. So I don't think that we're going to be able to, you know, concede on both issues.
Matt, oh, go ahead, Andrew.
No, go ahead, Stephen.
May I propose, if we do budge on short term, because you mentioned earlier that with moderate term, there's just no way, with the extended trials, there's just no way you could really also go to 75. The extra 15% was already a lot, from 50 to 65. If we can budge on short term, I'm sorry, would you be willing to go to 75% distribution? We believe that's fair. Because you are saving 3 months of extra research time that you would have had to do under the moderate term.
Right, but we're still already, delivering 15% more vaccines in that 3-month period than it would be, beneficial for our client. And so really what I want to get at here is that we're trying to balance, we're trying to do this cost benefit on, Ferona's behalf. And we really want to make sure that, that delivery window, what we're really looking at there, if you take out, everything extraneous, it really is that it's a lot more expensive for our client to deliver 15% more vaccines over the already conceded 15% more vaccines in that period of time. So I guess that's sort of where we're coming from. I don't know if my co-counsel has any additional comments.
No, I think that's well said. So for me to get a better understanding of this, I think the way that we could make this happen is if we stick at 65%. Well, I think we can go to 75% if we're paid more on the manufacturing front.
And what price were you thinking more? Because we currently offered, I believe it was 25 million.
Oh, that's right. And I'm sorry, Mr. McCants had said that y'all got a hard line there at 25, and I want to be mindful of that. So something that I think you could give us that doesn't cost anything is exclusivity, right? If we're talking about if we're butting heads on price, what if we look at y'all? You're not getting anything less. We're just able to have a little bit more flexibility to give you the things that you're asking for.
I would say though that this also kind of harms us in more ways than one, because when we're going with, I'm assuming you mean unlimited exclusivity, not exclusive exclusivity. Now at that point, so just as your client is the company, our client is the government of the United States, and its goal is to provide vaccines for the health and safety of its citizens. So we are pushing for a higher data delivery because more vaccines to us means more vaccines to the public. So we're just trying to push that out. We believe 75% is a reasonable number in response to the short-term condition that we proposed, just because I understand that it is a lot of extra money, but moderate is also a lot of extra money doing that additional 3 months from the short term. But with the short term, we are letting you do at least some basic testing that satisfies our concerns of any undetected effects of the vaccine.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Finish your train of thought, please.
I kind of lost it. Go ahead.
Right. I mean, and again, we are leveling with you that it is a lot more expensive. So I kind of just want to point out we're saving money by doing the short-term trial, but then we would also be conceding that money on the 75%. So that's kind of where my co-counsel is bringing in exclusivity, because that doesn't cost you guys any money. And we know that the administration is really, the Treasury can't afford to pay us more. And so what that does for us is allows us to make some of those financial gains in other markets. And so that we're not missing out, Ferona's not missing out on that money, but we're also giving you the 75% delivery in 3 months, which means that, US citizens are going to be guaranteed those vaccines. So we've increased the number of vaccines that you guys are going to be receiving in that 3-month period. And so, a concession by you guys on exclusivity would really, It doesn't cost you guys any money, which is, you know, a primary concern. It doesn't affect efficacy of the vaccines. And then, you know, we've obviously made the concession on the short-term trial. So in the context of this deal in particular, that money could be shifted to, you know, quicker production of vaccines. And I mean, honestly, this puts us, you know, puts our client where, you know, they need to be and they have the security in the market to make the money that they need. So that's, I guess, kind of where we're coming from with exclusivity and kind of contending that 75%, if we could have unlimited exclusivity, would be, you know, 75% is a good number for us.
So I just kind of want to go back to your point about how the exclusivity doesn't really affect us. So I don't have the authority to, you know, to tell the administration whether or not this isn't affects us or important, but they are pretty hard line if this is an important point for us. So, you know, this is kind of a moot point for us, for me and for our client, because
well,
they want some so go ahead.
We can't have no wiggle room on price or exclusivity. They can't both be hard lines.
Well, we're not. I thought we established a middle ground here of limited and cost plus, because we are paying extra here.
Well, yeah, that's correct. But if we're paying more in terms of getting more vaccines to you guys, then that exclusivity starts to hurt us a lot more than it did before, that very limited exclusivity, because we're still not able to really, you know, sell on the global market that we ordinarily have access to. And so that's where I'm saying kind of the 75% shifts, it puts a different light on what limited exclusivity and cost plus looks like for our client in real world context.
I just want to reiterate, though, that I don't have the authority to really determine this point of exclusivity. It's my client, the government, and if that's what they want, I can't really. It's really a moot point. We can't go unlimited. I'm sorry. It really isn't up for discussion. But we can try to negotiate elsewhere, and we just. Oh, okay, go ahead.
That's okay. We understand that. So I don't think that, you know, we need to belabor the point any if, you know, exclusivity and price are off the table. I think that we really need to hone back in on that date of delivery. And if that's the case, you know, we're going to have to really lean hard on that 65% number. Because just as, you know, you have directives from the administration, we have pretty clear directives from Verona. And that is to make sure that they get, you know, the most favorable deal out of this. And so in the context of what we have agreed upon now, I think that 65% number is really what we're going to have to lean hard on.
So kind of where I was at, it feels like we had a really solid end goal and kind of circled back a little bit. And I don't want to just blow everything up that we've worked on. And I think on the first 2 points, we were really solid. And I think on these last 3 points is where we really wanted to start focusing. And the reasoning was, I understand that short term is very important to you. And we're fully fine with accepting that. And I think just asking for 75% in lieu of moderate term or long term, simply because option 4, it does increase efficacy by 5%, which is very important to us. But it also only requires 1 dose. So we wanted to give you some leeway in these trials, but we also wanted to kind of get something in return. We just feel like increasing from 65 to 75 isn't as large of a deal if we're only requiring 1 dose. And of course, we're not really into the idea of using special fridges. However, if it's only 1 dose, you get to do your trials on a short term and because of that, we're able to bring out 75%. That's just kind of where I was thinking. Unfortunately, it seems like that kind of brought us back to the first 2 issues. But I just wanted to let you all know that's where my head was at.
Well, and Andrew, I think you're right. I mean, we are close here, right? So if we kind of put a wall between the first 2 things we've talked about and then these last 3, and we pretend like, you know, on either side of the wall, things work in concert. I think if we look at, you mentioned option 4 on storage and distribution. What I'm seeing based on my notes is that it could increase the efficacy, right? Is the word that I've been given. And we know that some of these other vaccine options do. Concretely, matter of factly, they have an increased efficacy. And so I think that distinction is important, to where if efficacy is that important, we probably both want to stay away from option 4, right? I don't think you guys are interested in something that could potentially happen versus something that's more concrete. And so I think where we're at is, if we can do a short-term trial and we can do option 3 on the vaccine. So we're getting as close as we can on the vaccine type, as far as it relates to storage and distribution. So if we can do option 3 there in a short-term trial, and just stick with us here on the 65% in the first 3 months, I think I might have to discuss with my co-counsel, but I think that's a done deal. With the understanding of what they were able to work through on issues 1 and 2, and we've all talked about, I think that is a concert of solutions that work well for us and y'all, that take into account both parties' concerns and goals. I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, really quickly, my only concern is, if we do go with option 3, we do require 3 doses. And that is kind of a point where we would want and kind of require 75% delivery. That's just one issue I can spot immediately.
So help me understand, is the amount of doses or is the efficacy more important? If you had to choose, which one concerns you the most?
Well, the issue with looking at it like that is, the data shows 3 doses causes a 5% increase in efficacy from 2 doses. So they're kind of interchanged. If I am buying enough doses for all the American citizens, for whoever gets a vaccine in the US for 3 doses, but we don't actually have the supply to give them those 3 doses, then we're not really doing what we're kind of trying to sort out here in this contract.
So Stephen, what I'm looking at, my option 2, the way I understand it, those 2 doses, there is no impact on efficacy. And so I'm not sure that I'm following you exactly here, but what if that kind of circles us back to option 1, right? It's 1 dose. So we know if people go once, they're vaccinated. And we suffer on that efficacy number. So I think that all of the options that we've been given, as far as how these products actually shake out in production, I think that 3 makes the most sense here. I think that's as close as we can go to your perfect world, your admittedly perfect world option of option number 4.
I'm sorry, I misspoke earlier. It is the same efficacy. What I mean, though, is if the reason why they're intertwined is, if we don't have enough vaccines in supply, then we are trying to give the citizens 3 doses of the vaccine. But what if we run out and suddenly we don't have enough to give everyone 3? What if they're on shot number 2 and we're out? So that's why we would like to see the increase of 75% to at least alleviate some of that concern that we have.
I think that's a valid concern, but the efficacy would not be changed by the delivery, right? And so you would see, if we're able to do option 3 and work within a 65% delivery range, there's not a change there. There's not a change in efficacy that we have to be concerned with.
Well, my main concern is, we are paying to get 3 doses, and it seems disingenuous to not be able to provide the 3 doses to whoever is coming. If we run out of supply, then we pay for 3 doses for that person, and they can't get 3 doses. They're at 2. And that's a big concern for us because efficacy is one of our top priorities. And if we're going to be paying this extra for this increased efficacy, we want to make sure we're able to do what we're trying to negotiate.
Right. And, we understand that. And so I guess I would contend that from the data that we have, and just putting this strictly into, a real world context, that 10% difference from 65 to 75% doesn't change the fact that there is still a probability that people who had the 2 doses don't get the third, or person who has had the first dose doesn't get the second 2. And so I guess what we're contending here is that increase in 10% for us is an extremely large financial burden, and it doesn't actually dissipate the concern that you've presented, that it would cure. And so, for us, still option 2 seems to be an extremely good option, because not only is there efficacy, and not only will there still be short-term clinical trials that can, as you alluded to earlier, increase that efficacy. There's only 2 doses. So that actually solves the problem, that the administration is really concerned about being able to provide doses to more people. Either that or option 1, where 1 dose goes to 1 person. So all million vaccines go to a million people. So that's really the only way we can see curing that problem. And, so that 65 to 75% jump for us just doesn't justify it.
I think option 2 makes the most sense.
So I know that we were hearing 65% and option 3 were originally what you really stuck at. And that is something that we are willing to work with. However, we're going to need something in exchange, and we would like to have a moderate term. That's just the quid pro quo that we're going for. We would hate to be stuck at such a crucial time where we're really close to the end, but we gave 2 alternatives that we're more than happy to close on. And I think now we're just kind of leaving it up to you.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Option 3 is a major concession on our part. And I understand you have concerns about how that plays out. But if we are taking into account your concerns with special storage and a desire for increased efficacy, both of which you guys laid out and suggested, then yeah, if those are true concerns and the other 2 are non-negotiable, I don't know what we're supposed to do. So I would suggest option 2 is kind of our silver bullet. Mr. McCants, you and I talked about that some. In the event that option 2 doesn't work, we're willing to work with option 3, right? As you guys said, we'll keep the short-term trial as we had talked about. And then we go 65% within 3 months. I think, Stephen, you brought up a point that may not necessarily be valid as far as what that difference does for the American people. And I understand where you're trying to get, but I'm not sure if that's the right way to get there.
I'm sorry. I thought we kind of had an agreement on option 3, and now you're throwing option 2, which has a lower efficacy, combined with short term, which we're willing to go back on to go back on moderate to short if we stuck with option 3.
The only reason I had raised option 2 was to try to quell concerns brought up by you guys. So if option 3, if option 2 is a non-starter, we don't want to talk about it. So option 3 it is, and we're happy to do that.
Sorry, go ahead.
We're happy to go with option 3 because if 2 is a non-starter, we understand. So 3 is a major concession for us, and we understand that you worked with us on short term. We started at a 50% term. Right. And we're willing to come up to 65%, 15, percent there. And over the 50% that we had talked about, that's a significant increase, right? It's nearly a third. And so I think that let's ink the storage and distribution, right, as option 3. And then I think let's ink a short-term trial. And let's circle back one last time. I know we have very limited time here, but let's circle back one last time to delivery and see if we can't come to an agreement. Does that sound good to you guys? Okay.
I believe we have till 6, so.
Okay.
So I'm continually hearing what you're saying about your issues with the length of the trial. And so what I'm willing to do is I'm going to give 2 options that you've likely heard before. And you can meet with each other, to your opinions, but this really is kind of bringing us to our endpoint. We're not available to go any lower than where we're at. And so what these rules are will be limited, cost plus, 75%, short term, but option 4. And the next option that we would be willing to do is limited, cost plus, 65% as you mentioned, but moderate term, and option 3.
Would y'all be interested in commercial data in 65? Is that interesting to you at all?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, just wanted to ask.
And if you need me to run through them again, please just let me know. I know I said a lot of numbers all at once.
Yeah, so I think that if you're able to do I understand, you know, we've gone round and round, and it looks like you guys are not going to budge on some stuff, even given our willingness to kind of try to come up with solutions that address your concerns. I think if we can do 75% short term in option 3, paired with a limited and cost plus, I think we have a deal.
So just to make sure I'm clear on that, it was limited, cost plus, 75%. And then it was short term, correct?
Yes.
And then did you say option 3?
That's correct. And we know that you guys don't want to go home empty handed.
It's a combination of the offers.
We don't either. And really it's a combination of the 2 offers that you guys gave. And we think that given all of our conversations, that makes sense for both of us.
Let me discuss like 30 seconds with my co-counsel. Thank you.
Okay.
Deal sounds great with us. Thank you for working with us through everything. Thank you for being so cordial, and we got through it.
Yeah, thank you guys. We really appreciate the time and effort that you guys took to be prepared for today. We'll get something over to you soon. Thank you very much.
What does the chat say?
Everyone should be leaving to go back to the main room once this is done. Thank you all for your participation today.
Thank you guys. Great job.
Thank you.
Hey, Britt and Danae, thank you guys so much for staying or joining us to judge tonight. We really appreciate your time. If you would just turn in those score sheets for the judges' side. And you guys are free to go as soon as you'd like. I'm going to have the teams are going to be sticking around for a little bit longer. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you again, ladies. Have a great
Bye.
weekend.
You too. Bye.
Teams, if you have not yet, please send in your score sheets. I'll be calculating those. And then if you want to turn your video off and just hang out for a little bit, I'm going to wait until everyone's done.